Sounds good.
Soldiers in the ruins, rubble in the streets, corpses near the buildings, all this light and heat. Time to take a stand, boys, time to make a choice, time to find our courage, time to be deployed. Make our only stand here, make our roads complete. All we waited for now, past the future meet. Get your weapons ready, kiss loved ones goodbye. Now our time is coming, and it is not the time to cry. Fight the war. Fight the war. Fight the war. Oh, here's why we're fighting. It's about the bite. Let the writers writing settle wrong from right. In the time of conflict, when the bullets fly, in the space of seconds, a life you cannot buy. Face the facts before you, face the simple truth. We're hopelessly outnumbered, it's tragic but it's true. Make your last formation, take the final road. Now it's time for endings, now it's time to go. Fight the war. Oh, fight the war. Fight the war. Soldiers in the ruins, rubble in the streets, corpses near the buildings, all this light and heat. Time to take a stand, boys, time to make a choice, time to find our courage, time to be deployed. Make our only stand here, make our oaths complete. All we waited for now, past the future meet. Get your weapons ready, kiss the ones goodbye. Now our time is coming, and it is not the time to cry. Fight the war. Oh, fight the war. Fight the war.
Oh yeah, what's up everybody? Hello people, wonderful people of the internet, etc. What is going on everyone out there? Hello Pav, what's up African? Hi Lego, what's going on Lakota Warrior? What is, there are a bunch more people. Z-Zombie, what's going on with Intent? I know who Panita is and I'll explain that in just a minute. What's up Lego? Hello Meat Bomb. And Lego, really? You need to put me on top of a water slide, really? It's like that? That's how things are now. I see how it is. What's up, Sir Tifi? Good to see everyone today. Hello, Arcades. I hope everyone is doing well. Hello, Common Rider. You're pumped for today's stream. So am I, man. So am I. I'm glad to hear that. All right, first things first. Hello, everybody. As you all know, please click that link right there. Game of the year. Well, we're going to find out, apparently. There's some positives here I think we can already see. I'm going to introduce my guest in just a second. Just a quick note. Please click that link to tweet. As you folks know, this is what's going on today. Obviously, yesterday we had a chance to interview Jon Fenice from Ubisoft Montpellier, which was awesome. I really, really like Valiant Hearts quite a bit, and I'm really looking forward to this game, which has got a ton of buzz associated around it. And yes, Z-Zombie, I agree. The game does look amazing. I am really looking forward to it, and I think a lot of people agree. It's gotten a lot of comparisons to Baldur's Gate 2 and other games, which are obviously amazing. So that's the deal with that. Let me get rid of this scroll. Let me get rid of this, and let me add in this. Someday. Oh, yes, that's right. My webcam is not going to work until I shut off my webcam on Skype. Let me take care of that situation. There we go. Now you should have a web. There we are. Yes, indeed. So Sarah is going to have to see me only through the Twitch stream. Okay. So hello, everyone. Hello, wonderful people. It is good to see everybody. And I am very, very pleased to introduce my guest. This is someone that we've had set up to go for a long time here. And I reached out to Larian Studios I don't know, I want to say at least a month ago, probably, talking to them about wanting to get someone on to talk about the game. And as you folks know, I typically like to be able to speak to writers because, you know, I identify. Those are my people. And I wanted to be able to talk to someone who could talk about the narrative and the narrative flow. And I am happy to say that I've gotten one of those people. And so I am very happy to welcome to the stream one of the writers for Divinity Original Sin, Sarah Baylus. Sarah, thank you so much for being on tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very much looking forward.
Yeah, and I'm sorry again, as I've been saying, I apologize to every person from Europe that I'm doing this at like some absurd hour in the morning for you. So I'm sorry. You know, I can only say that if time zones were different, they'd be different, but they're not. So thank you anyway, nonetheless.
Yeah, sure.
So yes, you are on time, Shouted Mage. What's up, everybody? If you could say hi to Sarah in my stream, that would be wonderful. And also, Sarah is actually here with her old Twitch account, which is Pawnita. So in case Pawnita starts answering your questions and you wonder who the heck this person is, that's who this person actually is. Yeah, I know, Sir Tifi, 2 a.m. What can I tell you, man? I live where I live, you know. And there she is. I am Sarah. Hello.
Yeah, that's me.
That's you. All right. So as I add your video source here in, I want to start by asking a little bit about some of the basics, which is number one, why writing for games in particular, and then number two, talk a little bit about how you came to the Divinity Original Sin game specifically and your work on that.
Yeah. Oh man, I feel like Cinderella or something, really how it worked out, because you know, when you're a kid, this is a dream job. You think to yourself, if you could have any job in the world, what would you pick? And for me, this is right there, you know. So about this time last year, I had been doing freelance writing, freelance editing, and proofreading for quite some time. And very luckily, at a party, I met somebody who worked at Larian, and they told me, oh, hey, we've got this opening for a writer. You should apply. And I thought, oh, well, okay, I'll throw in my lot with the thousands and we'll see how it worked out. And yeah, amazingly, it worked out somehow. So I got very lucky. It's very, very cool for me.
That's very neat. So you had to send samples, I assume, or things of your work previous they had to see, or did they have you write in the world first to be able to get a sense of it, or?
First was samples, yeah. And I think initially I had sent in some stuff that I wrote for an in-house education company. So it was like what I had that was published, but it wasn't exactly what they were looking for, this sort of thing. But they saw that I had some technical experience, so they gave me a little bit of freelance work working on Dragon Commander, their last release, just some stuff in the manual, minor jobs. But yeah, all of that went well. So then when it came time to get somebody for Original Sin, they remembered me.
Oh, excellent. Okay, and they brought you in after the Kickstarter, right? So it wasn't part of the initial group, but then after the Kickstarter, that's when they wanted you in and on board, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Okay. They had about 2 years of work pre-production before I came in.
Okay, so then talk a little bit about the process of writing for a game like this, because as you said, it was kind of a dream job, but last night I was talking to the audio and content manager for Valiant Hearts. That's very much a game that's not about dialogue. It's not, you know, there's not a lot of, I mean, there is character development, but it's much more abstract, whereas with you, I assume it was a lot of dialogue, and a lot of fleshing out characters that way. So I'm curious about how the process was for you, and was it just one? How many writers did you have on the project total? Was it 2 of you, 3? How big was the team of writers for this?
It's just me and one guy, Jan. And Jan is amazing. He wrote all of the Divinity Dragon Commander by himself. And I also Divinity 2, The Flames of Vengeance. He
Okay.
wrote every word of it by himself, which is mind-boggling to me.
Hmm.
Yeah, so for this one, it's just the two of us, and indeed, it's a lot of text, as you say, a lot of dialogue. You don't have the emotional expressions or the faces that you get from these like super high CGI games, so it's really a lot through the text. It's a challenge indeed, and I think the community has certain standards for what they expect from that sort of thing, and so it's a challenge to get to that point where you hope that they're happy with what you've done.
You
But
weren't
yeah,
you weren't
it's fun.
concerned that anyone might have an objection and would let you know about it vocally, would you? Because I imagine the internet's much too polite for anything like that ever to happen.
Yeah, 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 indeed. I know. It's stay away from the forums if you're having a bad day, or go on them if you're feeling masochistic, indeed,
Right.
because you'll always find lots of yeah,
Yeah, it's like walking
yeah.
into a spa. You need to have the skin sloughed off a little bit, and you need to feel, like energized and revitalized by people beating the hell out of you for whatever it is you didn't do. Well, then,
Yeah.
so explain to me a little bit about the process of something like this, because I've talked to many major writers and developers over the years who have written for games and who have talked about vastly different processes from people who use content documents. And I know the guy who was the head of Blizzard North, David Brevik, what Blizzard demands from people as far as how many, the so-called content Bibles and how much lore they have to know is staggering. And then there's others who do things very much from the ground up. So I'm curious about how much, what the process was for you about writing for something like this. Did you just have to sit down and study for, a month on end, just lore from Divinity, or how did it all work for you?
Let's see. In this case, it's a little bit lucky because this is a prequel in a way. It takes place before any of the other Divinity games except Dragon Commander, but that's the timeline is very long in this case. So we kind of got to invent a lot of lore that would fit into the later canon. So in that sense, it was yeah, a bit more creative and inventive than perhaps joining another franchise in the middle of it for a sequel or something like
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it was at the point that I came in, they were really getting into the heart of a lot of the gameplay. And while the studio really values story, gameplay always comes first. So as they're changing stuff with gameplay, the story has to keep up with them instead of the other way around. So there was really a lot of, it was amazing. It was so new stuff all the time, creative. Like we've made this dungeon, okay, how does this fit? So yeah, I think it was a really kind of inventive process rather than just studying to keep up. So that was very cool.
That's interesting. So they very much were willing to allow you to shape out the world, and they would kind of figure out a way to reverse engineer it, as it were, as opposed to, nope, can't go there because that's limited for X, Y, and Z reason then.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's a good way of putting it, indeed. It's a very creative place to work. Somebody has an idea, and if everybody kind of gets a little bit excited about it, we find a way to make it work.
Oh, very neat, very neat. And how much I want to, first of all, hi to everybody who's coming in. Hello, Serious Simon and
Hello.
Dragon Spear and Avenger. Hello, everyone. Yeah, and let me ask a little bit then about your process with, and it was Jan, right? That I was,
Yeah,
I had a yawn last night, so I'm going to get that confused 10 times tonight, I know.
that's okay.
But as you were chatting with, as you were dealing with Jan directly, had you known him at all? I mean, I guess from the Dragon Commander stuff, maybe you met him, but I mean, did you know him at all before this particular project, or no?
No, no, not at all. For Dragon Commander, I was living in Prague at the time, so we communicated all through email.
Okay.
And yeah, we hit it off really well during even the interview. Yeah, we've always had, I don't know, I guess, very good rapport, and he's very, this is a very Flemish thing. We're in the Flemish part of Belgium, and they're very modest people and very, I don't know, welcoming to new ideas. So Jan is not the sort of writer who had, this is my vision, and you're here to help, and this
Right.
is how it's going to be.
Right.
He was very much willing to hear, yeah, whatever I had to say, and he's a very cool guy to work with.
So, and did he now were there areas that were sort of cordoned off, like you will handle side quests and dungeons and so on, and he deals with main quest stuff, or was it just sort of whatever project was up on the sub project was up on the table for that day, or how did that all work?
It's kind of like, I guess, as we're fleshing out the story, if we have a story meeting, one of us starts to get an idea or have a little bit of excitement about a certain character or situation, and they just kind of, it's like, ooh, I'll do that one. Yeah, me. I like this person, or I like this scenario that we're developing. And we kind of go for a gut feeling of who's got the most kind of like nugget of something for whatever it is that we're dealing with that day. So yeah, it's a bit instinctual, I guess.
I see. I see. Which makes it easier to have only, two of you as opposed to a massive studio with tons of people. And actually, it makes me curious about how much interaction. I mean, Larian is not a huge studio. How much interaction did you have with others then? I mean, with folks who are working in the game mechanics or the audio people or, QA, or I'm just curious about how much of the team you were connected with on a daily or weekly or monthly basis.
Yeah, as you say, it's a fairly small studio. I think there's like 35 or so people right now. So you know everybody pretty well. We talk the most to designers and the gameplay guys and the scripters that are actually putting everything in as it goes, and we develop the story with them also in
Okay.
story meetings and such. Artists and code and QA, it's more kind of like on a when you need to talk to each other basis, not because
Yeah, I
you
mean,
don't like each
artists,
other,
who the
but
hell even
yeah.
knows what's going on there? I mean, really.
Yeah, they're in their corner. There's smells coming out of it. No.
That's funny. So, and was there any? How can I ask this without getting you in trouble? Was there veto power sort of implemented? I mean, were there things that you guys said yes clearly, and they said nope, sorry, silly writers, that's can't do X, Y, and Z because of money signs or whatever what happens to be.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Well, Sven, our boss, is kind of like the ultimate veto of the land. So he's always willing to let us know if an idea that we have isn't going to work or it's not coming along well in gameplay or just sounds lame or whatever. But he's the guy in charge. He's the CEO, the founder, and all of this and that. But he's very responsive also. Like I remember even in my first couple days, I was this nobody that had a little bit of writing experience, but I was a nanny at the time. And still he was willing to take me onto this big project and say, like, what are your ideas? What do you think about this character? What do you think about this and that? And I think that kind of comes across in the game that you have just like this explosion of ideas from a lot of personalities, and they're all in there in whatever way that they can be, because there's this very open kind of creative environment. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. And by the way, since I saw there were some questions about this, I will ask. Oh, they think you're funny, apparently, Sarah. So you've already impressed them with humor.
Thanks,
That's good to
guys.
know. So RPGs as opposed to other games, and then we will get into the game itself in just a moment. But RPGs as opposed to other games for you as a writer. Obviously, games now. I will later on, I'll let you know that I'm going to ask you about whether stories are having more of a presence in games or not. It's a slightly leading question, but I've been asking a lot of developers and writers about this. But in RPG specifically, is this more of what you would want to be focusing on in-game writing as opposed to writing in a more cinematic, I'm thinking, a Metal Gear game or a game where there's a lot of emphasis put on CG and sort of the movie style? Do you want more RPG style dialogue where you don't get the whiz bang CGI stuff, but you get a lot more sort of material to flesh out, or not so much, if that question makes sense?
Yeah, sure. I think, as you say, the whiz bang CGI would make everybody's job so much easier. But I think, I mean, when you have a facial expression or a movement or something like that, you can really get kind of subtle and convey something without your words.
Right.
But having to do it through the words and having the reader kind of have that experience of not being spoon fed the story, but getting to create the story, and it changes depending on which choices you make, for me has been a very rich experience to see now that the game is launched, how people are receiving it and how they're playing their characters. And yeah, I love it. I'm like completely enamored with it. Seeing everybody's response and getting to kind of feel this game together and feel how it's being fleshed out. So I think that's a little bit more difficult when you have a linear story rather than a kind of open sandbox RPG type world.
So so you do appreciate being able to flesh out more based on reader reaction too, or viewer reaction, player reaction as well. So you don't know where they're going to go, but that creates different stories, I suppose, every time they do the next step.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. I think, I don't know, the game, this is a phrase that comes up again and again, but you don't want the game to play the player. You want the player to play the game. And there's some really amazing narrative games, like The Last of Us is
Yep.
one of these that's done extremely well.
Yep.
But I don't know, these kind of open RPGs that have a little bit more call and response, I guess, between the developers and the players, I think is very cool.
Okay, that's very neat. Chat, just so everybody knows, first of all, welcome to everybody who came in. About mid-40s now and climbing, which is great. Just a couple of notes for everybody. First of all, both of us, both Sarah and I, have different potential power problems. I have thunder again. no thunderstorms all day, and then they move in at the end of the day. So I'm hoping my power holds up, and that my battery backup holds up. The weather gods were kind last night. Let's hope that's the case today. But if something happens, then please bear with us. We'll come back, and Sarah's a little bit of a power battery issue, which hopefully won't be a problem, but we're just letting everybody know in case that happens. And Dragon Spear, I am not going to forward the question of whether she watched the USA-Belgium match. She's originally from the United States, so I don't think she was happy about the outcome, and none of us were. And nonetheless, I still conducted this interview because that's how much I care about games, damn it. I let that go. But before we move on to the game, one last sort of general question then, I guess, about this, which is, I sort of foreshadowed it earlier. Do you feel that that story is becoming a bigger part of gameplay than it was, let's say, a decade ago? Is it, or am I just seeing that? I'm a writer myself, as you know, so I may have a tendency to be biased towards seeing these things where it isn't. But I wonder if story has become more a part of the game writing and game producing process, and I'm wondering if, as someone who's inside the industry, you see that as well or not.
Whew, it's a little bit hard for me to say. I feel like I'm a bit the games that I remember playing when I was young, I don't even remember their story, probably because I was too young to understand what was going on, all of the details and this and that. So
Right.
I don't know. I want to say yes because I see how much narrative is being involved in these games. I was just reading an interview with the writer of Far Cry 3 and reading his vision for the game and what he was trying to convey. It was like an interview with a novelist explaining like his idea for the novel and how
Yeah.
the novel was progressing and how it was playing with the audience and this and that. So
Sure.
yeah, I think indeed that it's becoming more of a literary art form, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, so something that certainly just seems to be driving it more. I'm just interested because I know a lot of friends of mine who are writers have gotten into the game industry, and I wonder if that would have happened, as I say, a decade ago. I mean, I grew up with games as well, but it seemed to me at the time there was more of a bright line between the folks who were doing the game design and the folks, not a complete line, but more often than not, people who were writing books were not doing games, and it seems to me that there's more crossover now, I guess I would say. So I was just curious if that's what you've seen on your side as well, or not, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. It certainly seems that way. I was just reading, I think, the blog of one of the guys at BioWare. I'm going to mess up his name. Neil Gaider? Gator?
Yep.
Yeah. And he was saying that a lot of the BioWare hires are accomplished fantasy novelists, and that's how they get the gig, basically. So indeed, exactly what you're saying is right.
Yeah, that they're kind of moving in that direction. That's excellent. So everyone in Belgium is currently a football fan. Is that true, Wasp? I believe that's true. All right.
And
Well,
Lego Freak, I don't look like a sports fan. Okay. Well, I was very much into the game, and I was very upset for about a day, and I had to deal with all my Belgian coworkers being very happy and smug. So, yes, I did watch the game. It was very tragic.
You see. So don't make any assumptions one way or the other, please, Lego. All right. So now, chat. As we get in, I'm going to start playing the game here, and I'll have a few more questions for Sarah. And then, as we're going through, as you folks know, the way we did this last night is how I'd like this to continue. If you have a question, please type it in all caps first, not the whole question, just the word question in all caps, and then colon, and then just whatever your question is. But please hold off on that just for a couple minutes because I have a few other things that I want to ask Sarah specifically about the writing for this, and then I'll let you folks have a chance to get some questions in as well. So let's move into this, and I'm going to get Sarah back here on my window capture. Hi, Rixa. Good to see you, Rixa. Bear with me just a moment. All right, and let's select that region. Excellent. Okay. All right, there we go. And let's move her up and then move that down. All right, there we go. All right, excellent. Okay, now I put this on yesterday, and then this is working. Oh, thank you for the follow, Wasp. Thank you very much, Wasp. I appreciate it. All right, game should be firing up right now as we speak. Oh, and thank you, Unique. Welcome to the Argonauts. Hi, AK. she was in Belgium and stayed up this long to do the interview. Respect, unless she's a night owl, anyways. Are you a night owl? Or you can say no and get even more respect if you like. That's up to you.
Yes, give me your sweet, delicious respect. No, yeah, I usually go to bed like around now anyway, so it's no biggie. And I
Okay.
had a little coffee earlier, so that was just a good excuse to have more caffeine.
Belgian coffee, I assume. I've never been to Belgium, so I don't know whether it's as good as advertised. But
Belgian coffee, no, I don't know. The Belgian beer is like 10 times better than advertised, I think. It's mind-bogglingly good, and the fries also. The coffee, yeah, pretty average, I guess.
pretty
but
average. And
yeah,
the
they've got their
chocolate,
strengths.
which I know is the big thing.
Chocolate is delicious,
Okay,
yeah, indeed.
alright.
It's all true.
As good as advertised. All right. All right. I am turning down sound. Everyone in chat, let me know when the sound is okay. This is not something you can troubleshoot ahead of time because you don't know. There we go. All right. Yeah, I know it was a bit... the follow sound? Yeah, there's not too much I can do about that, Z, unfortunately. Belgian beer rap. Everything is better here, Arv. Everything. Yes. Yes, Viz is actually Belgian. So we have...
Okay.
Yeah, we have a number of European viewers. Tifi's from Finland. We have some from France and Germany. So we'll see.
Belgian beer is okay. Yes, it is indeed. You can't compare it to anything. I wonder, Biz, what part of Belgium you're from? I guess that'll show up in like a minute or something.
Yeah, this Twitch delay, my heavens. Little quiet, but it's pretty good. Is the sound too quiet from your side? If it's quiet, I can bring this up. Yes, you're an Arvanaut Common. Yes, man. I'm intrigued to play the game now just to see how good her writing is. Yeah, now, will we be able to... I know that you said it would sort of depend on how things went, but were there characters that ultimately became more one writer's character than the other? I mean, one where you largely wrote one character or not? Or could we pick out and say, yes, this is Sarah doing this character? Or was it collaborative in every sense?
I think a lot of collaboration went into the development of the characters. When it came to divvying them up, a lot of times we would pick one and pick one. I'm not going to tell you who did what because I fear your judgment.
Because they were waiting right now, and you could tell they were poised to say which one. Okay.
Yeah. So anything that you read that you liked was from me. Anything that you thought was questionable was from the other guy. So just keep that in mind as you're, Yeah. It's roughly half and half, and we do have somewhat distinctive styles. We try to obviously keep a style for the game, but maybe if you play enough, you'll be able to figure it out.
Can you classify what that style is? What would you define as your style of writing in particular? And also, while you're answering that, would it change from your style of writing so-called normal prose or non-game related prose?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think there's a lot of bleed over.
Okay.
Normally, when I'm not writing for the game, I kind of tend towards poetry. I kind of like poetry a bit more. It's a bit more manageable for me, I guess. After dealing with a sprawling, huge game all day, I like to come home and have something quite concise to deal with.
Gotcha.
In general, I think the style between the two of us is very kind of stereotypically European versus American. I think I'm a little bit sillier, and my sense of humor is slightly more slapstick. Hopefully not too much. I don't know.
Right. Anytime they find any slapstick moment, they'll say, "Oh, Sarah's slapstick brand of humor." That's pinned on you now. You'll never get rid of that.
Yeah, basically. So, well, okay, I'll tell you guys this. I wrote the rats in the game, so like the rats and some of the smaller animals. That's kind of my humor, I guess, like silly small animal humor in a way. Whereas Jan is kind of sarcastic and wry and has kind of that British dry humor going on, which comes across in the game also. So we try to keep a balance of the two styles, I guess.
I wonder also if that's kind of an American versus a European style that they might have appreciated also. A sort of an understated style as opposed to the American style, which might be a little bit more, not blatant, but, more direct, I guess. Was that there, you noticed, or?
I don't know, actually. Yeah, I don't know. I think
maybe not. I'm literally just curious. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know, actually. Nobody said anything. I think people appreciate having some balance between these two very different styles. That if you had all of one, you might get a bit bored of it after 40 hours, 100 hours of play or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. I think it was out.
I gotcha. Okay, and I think I've just about gotten the people in question are everybody knows who everyone knows who this is, Arvin Eleron. That's connected somehow to me in some way, and Senevine is actually my daughter in real life's name. So that's I feel like that's appropriate, and also chat knows who these people are. So, now, do you have a particular favorite class that when you started playing you appreciated above all others, or not, or classes?
Um, let's see. Ugh, I like all of them, and actually, just recently, I'm really starting to get to play the game and play the combat and go through the story for the first time because we've been so busy crafting it so far. So I've just started. I think right now I have a witch and a knight.
I
So
see.
that's what I'm working with now. But I like the spells. The elemental interactions in the game I find really fun. So I like to play with that as much as possible. So all the kind of ranged elemental type heroes are my bag right now.
And what is it like, by the way, walking around in a world? I've had one of my novels had the first part of it turned into a module for Neverwinter Nights 2, and I remember being sort of blown away by it. I mean, I guess any writer who has a work sort of turned into film or some other medium has this effect, but I wondered what it's like for you to see, characters in a totally different medium speaking what it is you told them to speak, to be silly about it. I mean, what was it like for you coming across your own work in this medium?
Oh man, mind blowing, especially when we got some actors to speak the lines. Hearing those voices, and the voices add so much richness to it. It's kind of what I was saying about how with the CGI, the writing becomes so much easier because you have so much working with it besides the words. I didn't realize this would also be so true with the voices. The actors were able to put so much personality in lines
In
that
the
I had read
days
a
of
thousand
old,
times, and it
the
was like seeing it
sorcerers
for
of
the first time totally
Rivellon
new,
cured the
seeing
sick
someone else's
and
take on
healed
it, and
the
it was
wounded
this,
through a
yeah, really
great
amazing
power
kind of
called
feeling of
source.
community. Like, oh, it's all
But a
happening.
terrible darkness
Somebody
invaded
had
the
an
land,
idea about something that
and
I wrote,
source
and they
was
said it in
forever
this amazing
tainted.
way, and now it's in the game for
The
people to see. And
sorcerers
yeah,
who
it's
once
very
healed
amazing.
now
very cool.
only
Very
destroy.
Cool. Sorry, did I
madness has
blow everyone away
overtaken
with the
them.
sound on that?
A
If
few
so, I will-
brave source hunters
game
are
sound
all
too
that
loud? If so, I
stand
can
between
cut it down.
Rivellon and the dark power
Yep,
that
sorry.
threatens to destroy it.
Oh,
Wherever
please.
source appears, hunters follow.
Yeah, I apologize. This isn't just Larian that does this, but everyone seems to be really, really big on having cutscenes be 10 times louder than everything else. Don't know why
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah, sorry, did it blow out your eardrums just now?
Yes, my apologies, everyone.
Rise and shine, Master Source Hunters. The captain
So I
wants
have a
you up
question
on
about
deck.
Easter eggs in the game.
Hear them calls?
I consider the rats my Easter eggs. Not all of them are amazing or anything, but there's some really good hints hidden in the rats that run really fast and are really hard to catch. And so if you find those are from me, a gift from me to you.
Oh, excellent.
They
Very
said
nice.
Source that did the counselor in. Source in a city like Sicil. Nowhere safe anymore. Here they are.
Yes, our
Captain
pirates.
Sir.
God's blessings on
Now, all of these were these these were added in late, these voiceovers, yes, which is why the game was delayed.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay.
So we'll have to
Those were a kind of a surprise decision for everybody. Like there was always this talk floating around, like would the game be voiced, would it not? Originally it wasn't intended to, so we never considered that to be a possibility. And then it became a possibility a bit later in the game, and we were all struggling frantically to try to organize everything to make this possible. And so yeah, when we actually did get to put the voices in, we were just blown away, like, oh my gosh, it made everything so much richer, and it was so unexpected. It was really cool.
So you were completely working under the assumption that there would be no voices at all, that it was just totally on the dialogue to flesh out the characters without any, and facial expressions, but that was it.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, even the faces of the characters don't move. These guys do because they have the cutscene animations, but I think these are the only actual animated faces.
Yeah.
I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah, very, very neat.
But yeah, so we weren't counting on it, so that was a nice bonus.
Very, very neat. All right. Well, I see that we're now with 60 people, which is great. And now we have lots of people firing off questions. So now I will start taking them because lots of people have them. Apologies again for the volume issues. So, all right. Let's start with Rapscallion. If you folks asked questions earlier, please feel free to ask them again, and I will feed them along as I get them. So, Rapscallion, questions. Sarah, do you have a favorite game in terms of writing and story? I assume other than your own.
Yeah. Let's see. In terms of writing and story, I really love the BioWare companions. The way that their characters feel so alive and people become so attached to them is just so masterful. So that would be something I would aspire to in the future, to be able to write companions that people get so in love with that way.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, congratulations from Zyrebound on the most popular game on Steam today. Yeah, this really is picked up really well. It's rather impressive, I think. Hold on a second. Hello, my daughter. Okay, can you go back down and I'll come down in just a second? Dan? Thank you. Yeah, her mom is currently away and is going to be back any minute, so she came in to say, "Can she watch another show?" So
Aw.
apologies. That is Senevine, who you've already heard about the name of. Okay, let me see. What else do I have here? Yes, Common Writer. Question: how do you write so many possible storylines for all the choices that players can make, also have character development, yet maintain structure? It sounds like a huge task.
It is a huge task indeed, and it's such a painful task sometimes also because you want to add more choices and have one storyline. You want it to make just as great as all the others. You know, you want to make the unbeaten path just as great as the beaten path. So that's what everybody is striving for, and eventually you will inevitably run up to a time constraint, or we have to publish this constraint. So you have to be selective about what you can do because, yeah. As you say, it's a huge task. It could go on forever. It could stretch on into eternity. So at some point, you just have to cut it.
So you kind of assume a certain range of reactions then? I mean, a certain range of behaviors, and that's kind of the best way you can handle it, is sort of the way to look at it, or not?
Yeah, indeed. You try to give enough variety so that people are have enough unique choices to make, and sometimes you'll try to slip in one that's just a joke, or something kind of special, Easter eggy type thing, like, oh, I don't think anybody would pick this, so I'll put this there, and it'll branch off somewhere. So there's a few like that, but
Excellent. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Let's see, from Certifi, question: other than stories, do writers, you for Divinity, get a chance to have an impact writing immersion, environment, general feel in the world? Is the task split between writers? If so, is it more as important than writing the actual storyline? So I guess it's more of other things you do as far as world building other than just the story itself, dialogue and so on. Did you have an influence on that with the developers and the folks that you were speaking to?
For me, for this game, no. I came in kind of as that was all established. They had the source hunters, they had the environment, they had all the worlds made. But I know that Jan, my co-writer, the lead writer, was very involved in all of this process. And he's listed not just as a writer, but also as a designer, because he was very involved in the fleshing out of the world. So I know that he had a lot of impact on that, indeed.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see. Shadow Mage asks, I want to know about her experiences in the game industry as a woman. And there's a charged topic. There's a distinct lack of female presence in the gaming industry, so any views she has on that, I'd be glad to hear about. And that's actually been, I'm thinking a little bit about the recent sort of blowback thing that happened with Ubisoft and their decision. I don't know if you're familiar with this, with Assassin's Creed Unity. There was a discussion about the characters and female characters, and they said, well, it would be too difficult to animate. And then people said, well, why should that be considered difficult? So anyway, I'm curious about that as well as a writer. First of all, in this industry, which has been traditionally male dominated, though that's changing, I guess. What are your experiences like as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, I think being a part of this process has opened my eyes so much to how it happens. I think occasions where there is less representation of women in the games, I think is very rarely done on purpose. And that's something I discovered because I came into it expecting it to be this like super macho boys club, like, no, women don't sell, don't put a woman in the game, blah, blah, blah. And perhaps this is true in bigger companies with bigger budgets and more risk, I guess. But what I've found at Larian is that's really not the case. Like if there was ever a time when I felt like, okay, why are there no women in the scene, or why are there no women present in this or that? It was never a matter of, well, we don't want to do them, or they won't sell. It was just kind of a matter of like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay, let's switch this up. Okay, yeah, I'll do that, you know? So it's not always easy being, the only chick in the room. Sometimes you wish that the community support was a little bit more gung-ho about having diversity in the games, but yeah, in general, it's been eye-opening just as far as realizing that it's not a great conspiracy as I had imagined, you know? It's kind of just more about, I think, getting women working in the games, and then that's going to happen organically, that they become, more interesting in that sense.
So in a way, it was just it was lack of presence, which led to ignorance, enormous ignorance, presumably, about how these things work.
Yeah, I think it's just exactly a matter of lack of presence. I think as soon as there's more women designing games and writing games and making art for games, I think it's just going to level out, and I think that's happening. So yeah, that's good.
Interesting, and I am glad to hear that, actually. Let's see. Question: how were the Belgian? I don't, Wasp. Maybe you could read. I don't know what you mean by how were the Belgian colleagues. They were Belgian and they were colleagues, I assume. So maybe Maybe rework that question, and I'll take another shot at it. Let's see. Dragon Spirit asks, how different is game writing versus writing for a novel? It's a good question. What are the differences of the game writing side?
Well, I've never written a novel. I've made several abortive attempts. I've never completed the task. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe that's actually a better question for you. You'd have a better idea.
That's interesting. It's well, you know what? One of the things I'll ask, maybe this is a good way to ask this question, is there something unique about this medium, in your view, the game medium for telling stories, that distinguishes it from others? And that doesn't have to be a leading question to say, yes, games are better. They could also be worse. But I'm curious about games as a storytelling medium as opposed to movies or art or dance or, obviously writing. What are the sort of benefits, the strengths, let's say, of games as a storytelling medium, if they do have strengths in your view, for stories specifically?
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Well, I think a game like this in particular is unique because we have our two heroes who have a bit of a backstory and you know a bit of what they're doing, but you're intended to play the role yourself. And people come into this, from what I've read in the forums and my experiences, they come into it thinking like, okay, I'm going to make a rogue type, and this is what my rogue was kind of doing, and this is what they want to do, and this is their personality. So, yeah, I think it's, I don't know, kind of like this doesn't make sense really, I guess, but like crowdsourced storytelling. Like you give a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You give the ingredients. I guess it's like being a dungeon master, so that's maybe more accurate. But it's a story that goes back and forth. So I think that makes it unique among something like a movie where you pour millions of dollars into it, you put it in theaters, and it's done, and that's all. You've got your story. Yeah, that's a bit reductionist, I guess.
No, but I think you're onto something there. I mean, I've been really interested recently in this idea that the story, in a way, always takes place somewhere between the mind of the writer that produces it and the mind of the reader who's reading it. And in a way, the real actual process of reading happens in between those things. It's why, it drives me nuts when a writer will produce a story and then will sort of run around frantically, sort of like a mother hen, trying to dictate how people will understand the story. And the truth is that when it's done, it's not yours anymore. I mean, it's yours to the degree that you wrote it and you have a say, but it's not the only say anymore. And so it seems to me that games are the same way. It's somewhere between the game developer, the writer, the whole team of the game designers, and the people actually playing the game that the game actually happens. Somewhere in between those two things. So I want to ask also about this, because I think this is a really neat thing, and I'm going to be starting to co-op play this game with another streamer on Twitch tomorrow. But I love this idea that the two characters, that you role play each of the characters separately, that they each have control over that in a co-op sense. And I'm wondering about that, because obviously that meant that you had to have give options for two different players, not just one player to your game, but two different players with each other. So did that pose any unique challenges about having to develop dialogue choices that players would be sort of interacting with, if you see what I mean, rather than players against the game, player against player in this sense? It just seems unusual to me.
Yeah, I guess the hard part was giving them enough variety to be satisfied, whereas still keeping the game within a manageable shout, because there's no limit to how much variety you could put, how many options she could have to respond to this question, depending on how they would want to role play. And you kind of want to offer the player as much ingredients as possible to make the character that they want and to make the response that they want, but you still have to keep that manageable. So I guess that's the difficult thing, is just trying to represent the complexity of what you could possibly want to say to a question like that in a couple phrases, so that you can still only have whatever 8 results that it could be in the end.
Yeah, that's really interesting, but that's very, very different. And so I think, that's a really great addition, I think, to have those opportunities. So let's see. African Eskimo asks, are open dialogue RPG-like story structures on the rise as opposed to more linear stories? If so, is this because games are being taken more seriously as an art or career? I guess that's a little bit like what we were talking about before, about you were saying that you might prefer the more open RPG sandbox style because it gives you as a writer more room to move a little bit as opposed to a more linear story. But have you noticed that the sandbox game is becoming more popular in part because of the broader story implications, or is that just because people like sandbox games and it has nothing to do with stories? I mean, I know what we'd like the answer to be, but what do you think the answer actually is?
Yeah. Well, I know that there's a lot of exciting open world RPGs coming up, and there have been a few recently. I think in general, the linear story still dominates, and I think it will for quite some time. But yeah, I think people especially audiences that remember when games often were more like this are craving that. Like you're kind of done with the whole key marker goes here, guy has an exclamation point above his head, go talk to him, now go talk to here, now go talk to here. They're
Right,
tired of
right.
the game playing them. And I think, yeah, you'll always have these kinds of games as an alternative for people that don't want to just be kind of led through the game like a rat through a maze, you know? So
Yes.
hopefully you'll always have your options. Whatever you're in the mood for that day, you'll always have something.
That's true, and also takes the audience more seriously. It seems to me, as opposed to do this, do that, do this, and it becomes a kind of glorified series of tasks to fulfill instead of something else.
Yeah.
So no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, I was gonna say I feel that way. Yeah, I'm afraid of yeah, raining on the whole parade of linear games because there's some really fantastic ones. So I don't want to imply that
Oh,
I
go
think that
ahead.
they're
I'm not
all
interviewing
garbage.
them. Go ahead and rain on them right now. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah, no, I know that a lot of them have really huge emotional impacts. So I don't want to say like, oh yes, these are the only ones that count or anything like that. They're all very cool, but it's nice to have a balance of both. You would never want just one or just the other, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello to everybody. Hi, Kansas City Shuffle, and hello to everyone as I get involved in my first combat here. Welcome in. Hi, Draco Paladin, and hello to everybody who's just entered. Again, for people who came in a little bit late, I am interviewing Sarah Baylus, who's one of the writers for Divinity Original Sin, this game that you see on your stream, which has gotten a very, very good response from the community, and which is really exciting, and I'm looking forward to playing it and speaking a little bit more with Sarah, who's kind enough to join us all the way from Belgium, where it's super late. So let's see. Dragon Spear wants to ask, who dictates the story, writers or designers? I think we talked about the idea that it was basically a team effort, and that the writers had a good amount of influence, but ultimately there is the person at the top of the chain who vetoes it. But you felt as if you were a part of shaping the whole world as you went along, essentially, right? I mean, to sort of sum
Yeah.
up we talked about before.
Yeah, indeed, indeed.
Okay.
I,
Let's see. Okay. Let me see. Dun, da, 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 da. Let me scroll down. Question. Second try. How are the people? Oh, there we go, Wasp. Okay. Oh, first of all, Simon asks, when does Sarah have to be at work tomorrow, if at all? Well, she doesn't live in America, so she has to be at work, I bet, as normal, right? No July 4th
Yeah.
celebration in Belgium?
No, I really was thinking about taking it off. I really wanted to, but we have we have some new content that's coming into the game, so still some more work to do.
Oh, very neat. So there you go. There's your answer. That's dedication, folks. And hi to Cypher21. Hello, by the way, to everybody who's followed in between. Thank you. Welcome to the Arvanauts. Sorry, I can't respond immediately, but I have to focus and listen to the actual answers to the questions that are being given. Okay, Wasp took another run at this. That's better, Wasp. Second try. How are the people who work at Larian? Are they kind, motivated? Do you go for a drink after work? Now I think that question makes sense.
Was this the revision of the "What are Belgians like?" question?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, my coworkers are awesome. I love them. I think my coworkers are my best friends that I have in Belgium. I've only been here for about a year, so it's still a little bit new. They're very cool. As I said before, I think the Flemish national character is very kind of modest. They could win the Nobel Prize, and I would say, "What would you do? What did you do this weekend?" And they would say, "Oh yeah, nothing else about this and that. You know,
Yeah.
I went over, I did a little thing. You know, they're very, very calm that way. So you have to really pay attention to get the truth of how cool they are, because they won't tell you right away."
Yeah, I would say that's a refreshing change from the standard ego, even in some game designer and developers who would be very happy to tell you what they won, even if they didn't do anything.
Yeah, indeed, indeed.
Yeah, that's good to know, though. I'm glad, because otherwise I could imagine being frustrating. Yes, hi, Xanos, and hello, everyone. So Xanos asks, question, how difficult is it to write a story for an open-world sandbox game? Some of that we answered earlier. Hi, Glob, by the way. Some of that we answered earlier, but is it more of a challenge to write a story? I don't know if we handled it that way. Is it more of a challenge to write a story as open-ended as this one? I guess we dealt with it to a certain extent, but is there something different about the sandbox writing as opposed to the linear writing? We talked about what you preferred, but is there a different challenge associated with each or not?
Yeah, indeed. You have to be very careful and hope that everybody in the room is paying attention to all possible contingencies of how your story could go wrong, because it can go wrong. In the way that the game is designed, you can completely miss a character that you feel is absolutely key to the story. They could just bypass that person, find the quest some other way. So you have to kind of hope that your story still holds together, still has the same impact that you planned. Everything falls together at the end without any of the major characters. And in this game, you can actually kill every quest giver and still finish the game. So you have to still kind of hope that you convey some kind of feeling, even if somebody wants to go rogue and annihilate everybody that they come across, you still hope that you've got a good ending for them. So yeah, you have to write a lot of conditions. One dialogue that you see might have 5 paragraphs, but behind the scenes, there's 20 paragraphs that you didn't see because you didn't choose the options to get those paragraphs, you know? So there's a lot of iteration and as I said, hoping that somebody in the room thought of the one thing that could go wrong and put in a note for you to fill in for that dialogue. So yeah, it's a challenge, but it's really fun also.
Mm-hmm. Is there ever a moment where you come to the end of that and you realize, oh man, we thought we had this addressed, but someone did? Because I imagine players always find things that you didn't expect them to find.
Yes,
that you think,
yes.
oh boy.
My goodness, yes. Well, fortunately, Sven, the founder that I've mentioned a couple times, is very good at breaking his own game in the sense that we'll design something and he'll go through and he'll say, yeah, well, I did this and I did this and it didn't work. And we say, okay, Sven, but nobody is going to do that in the game. And he says, aha, you don't know our audience very well because somebody definitely will spray oil all over the Ice King and set him on fire and then he'll be dead or whatever it is, you know? So
yep.
Yeah, he's very good at getting that. But of course, there's always new things to do.
Yeah, it's generally true that whenever anybody thinks that a player will not do X, Y, and Z, they will automatically do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You know, no matter what it is. Okay, let's see. Question, is this the only game you've written for? MMORPG asks. You said you had done a little bit of work on Dragon Commander, right? But that was more technical stuff, not so much the sort of creative side, or...
Yeah, that's exactly right. Dragon Commander, I did proofreading and I wrote one small creative piece for the manual. But yeah, this is really my first big project, so I was very lucky.
Very, very neat. Let's see. Unique VN, question. Are there any books or novels that you get inspirations from for the Divinity original sin writing? Besides John Milton, no doubt.
Yeah, indeed.
Are there any? So are there particular inspirations for your writing?
Well, you said the big one. I know that we talked about it earlier, which is why you bring it up. But Paradise Lost by John Milton, I was constantly reading it while writing this. And it's just so rich. And it's a bit...